على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. قال الله تعالى في شان حبيبي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه صلاة وسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. So last 5 Fridays we've been talking about Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, and as I keep reiterating, I want to show the connection or emphasize the connection between Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and his attitude towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as his attitude towards Sayyidina Ali and the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in order to understand that, we also have to understand Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. So today I'm going to start talking about him a little bit, and then later on join the two and kind of show the interactions and the love and the respect between them. So when we look at Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh, everybody talks about Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, and they talk about that his iman is the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which it is. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made dua, oh Allah, give me one of the Umars. Because the two famous Umars in Makkah at that time were Umar bin Hisham, which is Abu Jahl, and Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu is, of course, Umar. And that dua was accepted in honor of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. But when we look at the birth of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh, his birth is the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gets married to Bibi Khadija radiallahu anha, and he leaves the house that he grew up in, the house of his uncle Hazrat Abu Talib radiallahu anhu, and his wife Fatima bint Asad radiallahu anha, and he goes into the house of his wife Bibi Khadija. But every day he comes and visits. And one day his aunt, for whom he himself said that she raised me in such a way that she did not allow me to miss the love of my mother, which is not a small statement. So, every day he visits, and one day after he leaves, his aunt says to her husband, to his uncle, that what a beautiful nephew. Make dua that Allah give us a son like him. And so, this is before the declaration of prophethood, of course. And so his uncle, he says to his wife, it's interesting because Hazrat Abu Talib amongst Quraysh was considered, he was that person that when you were in trouble you came to. He wasn't well off as far as financially, but if you were in trouble, if you had an issue, if you needed someone to pray for you, he's the one you came to. And so when she says this to him, he says to her, he says, why don't you ask him to make the dua? When Rasulullah was 9, there was a drought in Makkah. And so after the drought had gone on for quite a while, Quraysh came to Hazrat Abu Talib and they asked him to pray for rain. He takes Rasulullah on his shoulders and goes to the Kaaba and has Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam make the dua. And as soon as the hands go up, the rain comes down. And so the next day when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes to the house, she asked him, she said, pray to Allah that He give us a son like you. Now, these people were the people of Hunaf. These were the Hunafa. These were the people who were adhering as best they could to the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam, unlike the rest of Quraysh who were doing the idol worship and everything else. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says he will not be like me, but he will be of me. And he makes the dua. Several months later, she is expecting, and one day she has this urge to go and make tawaf. And so she goes to make tawaf. And in the middle of her tawaf, suddenly those pains start that she knows there's no way, this child is waiting any longer. She was not like many of the other women at the time. She was a very decent, modest woman. And so she prays to Allah. She says, "Oh, the one who put the desire in my heart to make the tawaf, now give me some place to isolate or to hide from the people." And the Kaaba on the side of Rukn Yamani cracks open and she goes in. And so Ali radiallahu anhu is born inside of the Kaaba. And Imam Hakim is a scholar of hadith. And he's not just any scholar of hadith. He wrote Mustadrak, in which he includes many ahadith which Imam Bukhari and Muslim did not include, but they are at the same level or strength as far as those hadiths that are in Bukhari and Muslim. You have the same narrators. Hakim is not his name, Hakim is his title. And in the world of the muhaddiseen, of the scholars of the hadith, you have certain titles. Hafiz is someone who has memorized 100,000 hadiths. The body of the hadith may be the same, but you have different narrators, so that makes it a different hadith. So it's still one hadith, but you have multiple people hearing it, different chains. So you memorize not just the body, but you memorize the chain as well. Each one is considered a different hadith, even though the hadith portion of it is actually the same. So people say, well, how can there be so many hadiths? This is why there's so many hadiths. And technically one of those hadiths may be weak, but another one is strong. And what people do, and this is how people play the game, unfortunately, they don't like the hadith. They don't like the saying. Because it doesn't fit their agenda. So they'll pick out one of those that has a weak narrator somewhere. And says, oh, see, this is a weak hadith. And they overlook all of the ones that have the strong narrators in it. So and this is a common game that's getting played these days, unfortunately. So Hafiz is someone who's memorized 100,000. Hujjah is someone who has memorized 300,000. Imam Bukhari, in one of his statements, he says he memorized 600,000, of which 200,000 were Sahih. Of course, in Sahih Bukhari, you only have roughly 6,000, and that 6,000 includes some repetition. So where did the other go? Well, Imam Hakim makes up those. And then you have other narrators that are putting those in their books or collections. And Imam Bukhari also wrote other books as well, in which he includes these hadiths. But again, people play this game, well, it's not Sahih Bukhari. Well, just because it's not Sahih Bukhari doesn't mean it's not Sahih. Sahih meaning that, okay, yeah, the body is consistent with the way that Rasulullah spoke, and the chain of narrators is strong. So Hujjah is someone who's memorized 300,000. Hakim, which again is the title of Imam Hakim, whose actual name is Abdullah. Hakim is someone who has memorized 1.2 million hadiths. Yes. This is a gift from Allah. And we're not the ones who gave him the title. And it's not a title he gave himself. These are the muhaddiseen of the time, the scholars of the hadith at the time, who recognize him and give him this title. He states that it is akhbar mutawatira. Akhbar mutawatira means, common knowledge. Like I say, Makkah is in modern day Saudi Arabia. I don't need, some proof for someone to come and show me, okay, yeah, it's common knowledge. Like, we're sitting in Griffin. Somebody said, well, what's the proof that we're sitting in Griffin? You don't need the proof for that. It's common knowledge. He states that it's common knowledge. Multiple narrators, so many narrators you cannot deny it, that Sayyidina Ali Radha is the only one who was born inside of the Kaaba. Because there are people who bring a narration where Hakim bin Hizam, they say that, he was born inside of the Kaaba. Which wouldn't be a big deal, except the problem is that, when people do this, a lot of times they do these things because they want to downplay the significance of Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu wajh. So if you look at that narration where it says that, he's the one who was born inside of the Kaaba, he was born 20 years before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the first narrator of that hadith is in the year 207 Hijri, which in itself draws question to, where did this come up from? The interesting thing is, when we talk about the hadiths that honor Ahlul Bayt, that honor Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu wajh and the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have many people who come out with, these are fabricated. And I've literally seen people take a hadith, an independent hadith, where you still have the same meaning in, say, Muslim or, say, Bukhari, in different hadiths, and they say, no, this is fabricated, because it honors Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu wajh. The problem with saying that these are all fabricated is, history is written by the rulers. They say, to the victor go the spoils. Well, part of the spoils is also writing your history. If you look at American history in America, it's very different than American history taught in Britain. It depends on who's writing it. Leaders tend to have things fabricated about themselves to honor them. You don't fabricate things in that go or that speak well of your enemies. If you look throughout Islamic history, you look at the Khilafah, 30 years, Khulfa Rashidin. Then you look at what comes after that. So if I look at the time when the hadiths were being collected and written down into collections and books, this was the time of Banu Umayyah, and especially during the time of Banu Abbas. Banu Umayyah, it was mandatory for you to curse Ali radiallahu anhu from the mimbar. It was part of the Jummah khutbah. Who's coming up with this fabrication then? There is no fabrication. That's the point. The hadiths that go against them are the ones that are fabricated. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, rahmatullah alayh, he states that there are more verses in the Quran. And he says that they're not just more, period. He says there are 313 verses of the Quran that were revealed in honor of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh and Ahlul Bayt. Way more than anyone else. And he also states that there are far more hadiths in honor of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh and Ahlul Bayt, where, the closest second isn't even close. These are people who truly knew hadith. And not just knew hadith, they understood Islam. And even after Banu Umayyah, even though you don't have the cursing of Ali from the mimbar, you still, Banu Abbas were not the friends of the descendants of Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. So again, if they're going to fabricate anything, it's going to be against them, not in their favor. The people who have a lot of support, those are the ones who get the fabrication. When did Ahlul Bayt ever have a lot of support? They never had it. Karbala is testimony to that. You look at what happens in Karbala, you look at what happens with Imam Zaid, you look at what happens with pretty much all of them. Governments are always opposed to them. They always feared them. Even though when they weren't, what people consider today politically active. Because the governments also know if the people's understanding becomes correct and they start doing what they're supposed to do, these governments won't survive anymore. Because you can't control someone who only fears Allah. And so when Ali was born, an interesting thing about that crack is still there today. That crack in the Kaaba, if you go on the side of Rukn Yamani, is still there today. And what makes that even more interesting is that the Kaaba has already been rebuilt a couple of times since then. When Yazid attacked Mecca, one of the things that when they were catapulting fire into Mecca, well, it hit the Kaaba. The roof burnt, 3 of the walls fell. Later on, when another army invaded Mecca again, they also attacked the Kaaba. And even every time they rebuild it, that crack always reappears. So now when he's born, he won't open his eyes and he won't nurse. Of course, parents are worried. Is this child going to survive? When they get him back home, He's not nursing, he's not opening his eyes, he won't do anything. He's just laying there. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hears about the birth of a son in the house of his uncle. So he comes, and the aunt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the mother of Sayyidina Ali karramallahu wajh, she says to her nephew that, what's wrong with this child? He won't eat, he won't nurse, he won't open his eyes. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam takes him in his blessed hands, and immediately Ali opens his eyes. The first thing he sees in this world is the beautiful face of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we were born, we don't remember it, but the first thing we saw was the wall of the hospital or the doctor slapping us or something. Ali, the first thing he sees is the beautiful face of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Rasulullah places his tongue in the mouth of Ali, and the first nourishment that Ali receives is the blessed saliva of Rasulullah directly from his tongue. This is where we get the eloquence of Ali. One time Rasulullah, he asked the companions, he says, what is the most common alphabet in the Arabic language? And they all said, commonly used alphabet in the Arabic language. And all of them, without any hesitation, said alif, which it is. You look at alif everywhere, you find alif in Arabic. Ali, he stands up and he gives a whole khutbah without a single alif. This is his eloquence. He, of course, is sent off to be nursed after that, as was the practice of Quraysh, that they would send him to the countryside to be raised, because the air was good, the language is pure. So they come back stronger and with, and knew the language well. When he returns at the age of 3, from that age he is taken into the house of Rasulullah, because Rasulullah goes to his uncle, Abbas. And he says to his uncle Abbas, who was a wealthy man, he says that Abu Talib has many children, and this is a financial burden on him. So you take his son Ja'far, and I will take his son Ali, and we will raise them for him. And so from the age of 3, Ali's bed became the chest of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when he was asked later on where he attained this knowledge, and because one time he made a statement, he said, ask me anything and I will answer you. Because Ali is the nafs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the self of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Lahmaka lahmi, damaka damri, jismaka jismi." To Ali that your flesh is my flesh, your blood is my blood, your body is my body. And so, Rasulullah, of course, hadith in Sahih Muslim, where he stands up and he says, ask me anything between now and the day of judgment, and I will tell you. Of course, he's saying this in Jalal, because they were asking him questions they shouldn't be asking him. Questions that would put themselves in trouble. He said, okay, do this. And then they start asking, well, should I do it this way or that way? And just do it. If you don't ask that question, then you have leeway to do it this way or that way. If you ask, now you have no leeway. Like Bani Israel, They were ordered to sacrifice the cow. They said, oh, they all look the same to us. Which one is it? You know, what color is it? How old is it? All of this. Put themselves into trouble. And in the end, they didn't want to sacrifice it. So Rasulullah ﷺ did not like these types of questions. And so they were asking these types of questions, and that jamal, that beauty transforms to that jalal, that awe. And he makes the statements, ask me anything, and I will tell you, between now and the day of judgment. And Ali also telling the people, ask me anything. Because he is the door to the city of knowledge. Rasulullah said, Ana madinatul ilm wa aliyun babuha. That I am the city of knowledge, and Ali is its door. If you want to enter, you have to enter through the door. You know, somebody tries to get into your house through the roof, what are you going to do? You're not going to welcome him in. There are different ways of welcoming them. So the only way to attain true knowledge is through the door, and that door is Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. Anyone who says he has knowledge but has no connection to Ali has no knowledge. At least no knowledge that will be beneficial. We think he has knowledge. Knowledge is what increases you in the love of Allah and His Messenger. So that is true knowledge. So anyone who says he has knowledge, but again, no connection to Ahlul Bayt, he has no real knowledge. His knowledge is like the knowledge of shaitan. When Rasulullah ﷺ makes the declaration of prophethood, and for the first 3 years, and of course when he makes the declaration, you know, when the revelation first comes, the first to accept him, of course, is his wife, Bibi Khadijatul Kubra, radiyallahu anha. You know, this is a distinction for the women. The first one to accept Islam is a woman. The first one to die for Allah and His Messenger is also a woman. The first martyr in Islam is Bibi Sumayya, the mother of Ammar bin Yasir. You know, so these are distinctions for them. Points of honor for them. So the first, of course, again, is Bibi Khadija to accept him. The next is Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. He doesn't get included, or a lot of people try to exclude him. Let me put it this way. A lot of people try to exclude him because he was only 10 at the time, and he was technically a minor, because he had not reached the age of, or he has not attained puberty at that point. Of course, puberty for different people, different ages. So he had not. But look at his brilliance at that age. You know, he comes to Rasulullah ﷺ and says, I want to accept. Rasulullah ﷺ says, go and ask your father. He knows, you know, if he asks, then that gives his father the right to say no. You know, they're saying here, you know, ask no questions, hear no excuses. Another saying, which fits this more appropriately, is better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. You do something, and okay, well, you know, somebody gets, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. If you ask and do something and they said not to do it, now you're in trouble. So he says, go and ask. So he goes, but how does he ask? He fulfills the command he's told to ask. But he asks in such a way that he knows the answer will be a positive answer. He asks his father, he says, can I follow Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And his father's immediate response is, follow him wherever he takes you, he'll never lead you astray. So he comes back, he says, I got permission. time's up. Inshallah, we'll continue from here next week. So the next couple of weeks, we'll talk about Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu wajh, and then after that, then kind of blend it together where we're talking about the interactions between Abu Bakr and Ali radiallahu anhu, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and the household, specifically Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. Because these are important points to understand, because these are points that people create issues in. Create issues where there are no issues. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from this fitna of today, and may He fill our hearts with His true love and the love of His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all of those whom they love. And may He give strength and victory to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Palestine and Kashmir and Sudan and wherever the Muslims are being oppressed, and give them victory over their oppressors. Those who have not made sunnah, go ahead and make sunnah.